Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be talking about data frames again, but this time I'm going to be showing you how you can use data frames to change the difficulty of your task. So this is an example of one of those experiments where every trial gets a little bit easier or a little bit more difficult. So let me show you the task that we're going to walk through. As you can see in this task, I'm presenting two different images, and I am asking the participant to decide if the images are the same or different. And if you notice, the trials are starting to get easier. The differences are becoming much more obvious to the participant. Okay, so let's go back here and start a new task, and I'm going to show you how we built this. The first thing I'd recommend is have a fixation cross on a frame. That way, it's not quite so obvious the differences that you have between your images, because there is kind of that delay or lag time in between seeing the new images pop up on the screen. So I'm just setting the duration for 1 second and I'm hiding the mouse. Perfect. So there's my fixation cross. Now I can add a new canvas frame, and this is where I'm going to be putting the bulk of the task. So I'm going to add my two images to the frame here. Okay, and then you can put your text at the bottom or a button or any sort of response. I'm just going to keep it simple and show the two images here. And because I'm not doing any sort of event, I'm just going to set the duration to 2 seconds, just so you can see the trials moving along. Next, I'm coming down here to my trials and conditions window, and I'm changing the number to the number of trials I know I want to have. All right, let's get into the data frame here. Under the Variables tab, I'm going to click Add Variable, and I'm going to create a new data frame. New data frame 1. I'm going to change the format to data frame, and then click Edit. Perfect. Here is where I'm going to be putting in all of my stimuli. Because I have two images shown on my frame, I'm going to add 2 columns. Now, I highly recommend planning out your experiment on a piece of paper or making sure that you know exactly what's going on for these data frames. Also, rename your stimuli so that they always show up in the correct order, the order that you want to show. This makes it so much easier to call them up in the experiment. So I'm going to show you what I did here. And for this study, I'm doing variations of the same image of a dog. So I have my list next to me, and I'm just going to go down my list and select my first column of images. So this is that image 1 category. And for this experimental design, what I'm doing is I'm showing an image on the left and an image on the right. And then for the trial after that, the image that was on the right is now going to appear on the left, and a new image appears on the right, and so on and so forth. So I have my stimuli in the order I'd like them in. And so I'm just going through and selecting the ones I want to be on the left, because I'm going to link this column to image 1. And my rows are going to represent decreasing difficulty, actually. For this task, the first trials are difficult and the last trials are easier. Now I'm going to go to column 2, and I'm going to import the stimuli that I want to be on the right. And if you notice, I have my stimuli named kind of interestingly. They're kind of coded with letters and numbers here. And that just makes it a lot easier for me to see which ones are going to be in which order and in which column. Okay, perfect. So now I have all my stimuli set up here, and I can go ahead and click OK. And here's my data frame. And that's holding all of the image here. Now in the event, what we're going to do is we're going to call up the data frame to display the images. So let's create a new frame event. The trigger is going to be frame start. My first action here, I want to set that image 1. So I'm going to create an object action, set object property. I'm going to say image 1. I want its file data to be determined by a value that I'm reading from my data frame. So I select my data frame. For row, I want this to be the trial number. That's my global variable. It's already set in the experiment. And this is because I structured the rows as decreasing difficulty. So I want the experiment to get easier as you go on. So I'm associating difficulty and trial number together as the row. My column is actually going to be a constant value. It's going to be numeric. And this is because I'm setting column 1. All those images are going to be the ones loaded into that image 1. So I can set this as a numeric value. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add another object action, and I'm going to map my data frame to image 2. And this is going to be the same process, except at the end, instead of column 1, I'm going to have it say column 2. There we go. So I'm selecting my data frame. My row is again going to be trial number because I want the same image in the same row to appear together. And my column is going to be numeric, and it's column 2. Perfect. Now click Finish. So that event at the start of every trial is going to load in the correct images here. Lastly, I want to go to the randomization menu and make sure I've clicked Dynamic. And that's because we're using data frames and certain events to control which image is being shown. So we don't want this to be random, we want it to be exactly how we set it, but that's different from fixed by design and fixed by hand because we didn't use the factor tree in the trial editor, we used a data frame. So just click Dynamic. You'll notice down here in Simulation of Trial Sequence, because we've selected Dynamic, the window cannot predict what's going to happen beforehand, but that's okay because looking at our data frame, we know what's going to happen. And click Save. All right, let's do a test run here. All right, as you can see in these beginning trials, the differences are very, very subtle. It's a little bit hard to tell if they're different or if they're the same image. But now the differences are starting to get more obvious, so the trials are getting easier. Of course, you can structure this with increasing difficulty as trials go on. I just did it with decreasing difficulty to show you another way to do it. All right, and that's a really great way of using data frames as sort of structuring difficulty of tasks. And it's really simple. Everything is done with just this one event. Once you've loaded your images into the data frame, it's very, very easy to structure this sort of task. Thank you for watching, and I hope this helps.